Hello, everyone, and good afternoon, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is an author making their official author debut here on the show. Now, my guest today is the author of a Bond of Silver series, his debut into the world of independent publishing. He was born in December 28th, 1985 in Dallas, Texas, in the United States. And as a fan of fantasy and sci-fi, or just being an all-around nerd, it was only a matter of time before he began his journey into the world of writing about nerdy things. As a kid, films like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Spider-Man, and Spy Kids excited his imagination. And whenever it would snow, as it often did in Texas, sarcasm implied, he would usually think he was on the snow planet Hoth, recreating the moment when Luke sees the ghostly blue image of Obi-Wan Kenobi telling him to go to the Dagobah System. A strange scene to reenact, but a fun one nonetheless, as he would crawl around the snow pretending to be an injured Luke Skywalker. Now, as he grew older, he ventured further into the nerd universe with books from the Star Wars universe, as well as attempting to read the Lord of the Rings series. It's safe to say that the Star Wars books were much lighter reading compared to the works of Tolkien. However, as he entered his young adult years, he found himself playing an incredible video game called The Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt. And after much encouragement from a close friend to finish said game, my guest would experience one of the greatest games ever created, and that's a fact. Once he finished The Witcher 3, he would learn that there were books that the games were based on. Wanting more of the Witcher universe, he would consume the entire Witcher saga of books in the span of a few months. And in that period, two things came out from this reading. One, he discovered a new author he admired, and two, his obsession with reading fantasy had been rekindled. And from the works of The Witcher, my guest would widen his range of authors to the likes of Sanderson, McClellan, John Gwynne, John Abercrombie, and many more authors of the modern fantasy world. And although many authors, my guest would read traditionally published, it was not until he would read the Dragon's Blade trilogy by Michael R. Miller that he realized books could also be self-published. Not only that, but many of those who self-published their books were of the same quality and caliber, sometimes even surpassing those of traditionally published authors. That's when my guest decided to say, you know what? If these guys can do it, surely I can. And thus, we have a Shadows Vendetta, which is the first answer to that question posed a few years ago. And my guest hopes that people will read his books, but he's especially delighted to have written a book that he himself wants to read, which is very, very important. And to this day, he still resides in the Dallas area of Texas, where he can also be found playing video games like Halo, Total War, or Elden Ring, or engrossing himself in the 15th playthrough of the Sly Cooper series. Alternatively, he can be found reading another fantasy series or comic book, most likely Batman or something from the DC universe. And with all that and more, he also is cuddling with his dogs, Hugo and Otto, as well as watching the latest lore breakdowns on YouTube from some of his favorite YouTubers. So, with all that and more, I am super excited to have this guest on the show. So, fellow authors and viewers, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, self-published author, Mr. Travis Cooper. Travis, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gabriel. I really appreciate being on here. Thank you.
Awesome, Travis. I am so excited to have you here on the show and to talk all about A Shadows Vendetta, the first book in your series. So, before we dive into that book, is there anything else that you would like to add about your background? I mean, I don't know what else there is to tell. I mean, it seems like pretty much encompass your entire life, but is there possibly a facet of your personality that many people or maybe fans of yours may not know about you?
No, not really. I guess I'm pretty boring in that sense. I just like to be an all-around nerd, just play video games, read comic books, and read fantasy books. I really enjoy animation quite a lot. Not necessarily anime, but just like, just regular animated movies, like Shrek or How to Train Your Dragon, stuff like that. So yeah, just pretty boring. I'm just a nerd. It's okay.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, for people now just learning about you, Travis, what is a brief overview or a teaser of A Shadow's Vendetta? What can people expect from that book and the overall series?
So the series was really started when I kind of just had the epiphany to be able to write my own book, because I was trying to find some books out there that were kind of, written in the same style that the Silmarillion was written in by J.R.R.
Mm.
Tolkien, which is mainly from the viewpoint of elves, or it was necessarily about the elven mythology, about Middle Earth and about, Beleriand and the lands like that. But I couldn't really find a book out there that was really what I was looking for. So it was, the initial idea was actually through a playthrough that I was doing of Total War Warhammer 2. It was before Warhammer 3 came out. And I was doing I was playing as the High Elves, and I was doing like a world domination campaign. I was trying to conquer everybody. And I was like, what if I could like do a story about elves like conquering everything or something like that? It's like, oh, maybe we'll do that. That's not necessarily, it's definitely changed a lot, because I think the initial draft, I was like, I think I'm not having a lot of sympathy for the elves. They kind of seem like the bad guys. So I kind of had to change quite a bit of it, because that was, that's who's on the main cover. That's who most of the POV characters are elves. And then kind of just combine like my love of, Tolkien, and then kind of morph a bit of the action style of both Andrzej Sapkowski, who wrote the Witcher series, but also Batman comics, because I'm a really big fan of Batman and Daredevil. Daredevil from Marvel Comics, Batman from DC Comics, and just really like the action style that goes there. So I kind of wanted to mix a bit of kind of the way that Andrzej Sapkowski writes fight scenes, which are pretty blow by blow, and kind of the visual representation of them depicted in comic books. So that was kind of the initial inspiration for it. And I originally had a first draft that I had written that I was not very happy with. And then I was talking with my boss at my work, who ended up being my editor, which is, it's just a very funny coincidence that my boss ended up being an editor of self-published books. And I'm like, hey, I wrote a book. Could you help me out? So that was really funny. But yeah, it was kind of through her encouragement that, hey, maybe go back through it and just look at it. And then that really changed my whole perspective of it. And it really started to shape the story, and really about, found family mixed with a bit of like military fantasy into it.
Ooh.
Also with like kind of like that comic booky-esque like heroes fighting against villains and stuff like that. So yeah.
Nice. Okay. So going back to your bio again, it also mentioned that sometime in your young adult years, you discovered the worlds of self-published authors, and upon reading them, going back to what you said, how the same quality and caliber sometimes met or exceeded those of traditionally published authors, and that sort of gave you the spark to write your own story. Would you consider that to be your definitive aha moment, or was there another moment after that realization?
Oh no, that was definitely the definitive aha moment. I was reading before I got the omnibus of the Dragon's Blade, which is right over here. I think you could barely see it. Anyways, I'll leave that there. I had the original books of it, and then I was like, oh, these cover and the premises sounds pretty good. I'll read it. So I read the first one, and then I started reading about the author, and then realized it was a self-published book. And I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. So it was literally just from reading that, and then just reading, kind of looking up Michael R. Miller, who he was, which helped me discover, Ryan Cahill, Michael, Peloquin, I think is his name. Yeah,
Oh yes,
the
I've had
Dark
Andy
Blade
on the show
series.
too.
Yeah. I always forget how to pronounce his name, which is horrible. But yeah, just discovering those guys, and then through help with my editor as well, kind of discovering a few more, which really just gave me the inspiration to, what, I don't think this story is probably going to get accepted by a traditional published person, but it's a story I'd love to get out there and just see what it happens. It's a story I'd love to read. And so that was kind of just the initial inspiration from just figuring out by just reading a book, like, oh, I didn't know you could do this.
Absolutely. That's amazing. That's amazing to hear, Travis. So now let's dive into the creation of a Shadow's Vendetta. So let's start at the very beginning. So when you had this idea for this story, would you consider yourself the author that wrote an outline from beginning to end, or would you consider yourself an author who writes spontaneously from the seams of one's pants?
Am I is that a planter or a pantser? I think is what.
Yes.
I'd say I'm a mix of both. Originally, I had it all outlined, like I still have the original outline for it, which has the last line in the series that I want to have. Were just like key scenes that I would like to have. Because originally I had wanted this to be 6 books, and I had through that outline I had condensed it down to 4. To because the 5th and 6th book I was like, these events can honestly be smushed together. So there was that. But yeah, definitely for A Shadow's Vendetta, I had started out with kind of your traditional outline, doing like a main point right there, then some sub points. And then eventually I changed that into, I don't know necessarily how to describe it. It's like a really rough draft where it's just the chapter, all my ideas that I have for it. If I'm coming up in my head during that time, during the outline, if I come up with like a interesting line or something that I'd like to be right there, I can just go ahead and type it out or write it out. That way I don't lose it in case, start writing the book later and I'm like, oh crap, what was that line? I can't remember it now. That's a shame. So yeah, just the that way, it's kind of like in paragraphs of just, this is going to happen, then this happens, then this happens. It's not necessarily that bullet point type style that really is pretty common nowadays with outlines. But with book 2, which is what I had outlined and what I'm self-editing right now, I did the same outline, but then I started drafting book 3 too, and I'm just pantsing that one. So we'll see how that one goes.
All right. So from book 1, once you figured out the overall synopsis of the story, the plot summary, so to speak, did you have a ritual or routine that kept you grounded to make sure that you would finish at least a rough draft at an exact time so that you have enough time to look over it before sending it to your editor and then all the steps that came after?
Yeah. So before I'd start drafting, usually I'd just listen to music, like the Lord of the Rings soundtracks or the Kingdom of Heaven soundtrack. That's a really good one. And King Arthur, Legend of the Sword by Daniel Pemberton. That's definitely a favorite of mine. Really great one. But then once I started working with my composer who did the main theme for the series, which is going to be available on the audiobook of it. It's also available on Spotify right now for you to listen to. Once he had sent me that over, I would just listen to the theme real quick before I'd either start, outlining or going through and editing or anything like that. And that would be really helpful to kind of get me in the headspace of, okay, now let's write. Let's do this a certain amount of time. I didn't necessarily have like a word count goal or something that I would try to reach towards the end of the day, or really like a time limit on. I would essentially just work until my brain just stopped working. And then I'd be like, okay, whatever I write down past this point is just going to be gibberish. So I'm just going to stop and then let my brain kind of reset, and then we'll start again tomorrow. So.
Okay. All right. And then ultimately with this book, as the author, what is your promise that you're making, not just to yourself as well as your readers, but ultimately, what do you want them to feel and experience when reading A Shadow's Vendetta?
Well, I hope they get the found family vibe, really. That's something that I really love in movies, just movies, TV shows, comics, books as well. I mean, we're talking about books. I should definitely bring up books. Um, but being a big fan of Batman, most of Bruce Wayne's family is his found family. So I definitely wanted to evoke kind of that same feeling that I feel whenever I read like a Batman comic or something like that, that either deals with Bruce Wayne encountering somebody else and then they become really close. Um, so definitely with that, some fun action scenes as well. I really hope people like those because I worked a really long and hard time on them. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'm interested to see what people think of the action scenes, particular. But also just to get lost for just a little while. The book isn't it's excuse me isn't extremely long compared to a lot of epic fantasies. It's not reaching the 200,000 to 300,000 word count. It's more of the 95 to 100,000 word count. So if they could just escape for a little bit and I can help provide that, that's task accomplished.
Nice. So now let's talk a little bit about the characters themselves, Travis. So in your book, Shadow's Vendetta, how did you write the characters to feel authentic and yet compelling? And as our first fan question, who are some of your favorite characters to write in the first book, and who are some of the most challenging to write?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question. I'll answer the first part of it. So initially, the guy on the cover here, I'll hold the book up here. The initial guy on the cover is also known as the Shadow. Oh, whoops, Shadow. But his name is also Talek, and that kind of was a big inspiration. Obviously, Batman was a big inspiration for him. A big reason why I went back and changed the initial draft of it was because I essentially just wrote Geralt of Rivia, but an elf. So I had to go back and change that quite a bit. But he was definitely a lot of fun to write. Talek is his main name, Talek. He was definitely a lot of fun to write. Just not necessarily a character that I would necessarily categorize as being relatable, but just fun to read. Particularly, he's involved in most of the action scenes in it, but just a cool character to follow around, kind of having that same instance of, a little bit of Batman, a little bit of Geralt. Geralt isn't really relatable in the books that much, but he's just a fun, cool character to read about. You can't help. I think I forgot her name. It's in the final book. It's one of the characters is spoilers. Spoilers for Lady of the Lake if you haven't read it. One of the side characters is dying in Ciri, which is Geralt's found family daughter, something like that. She's asking, why did you follow Geralt? And then the side character's like, we just couldn't help but follow him. So I kind of wanted to make a character that kind of evoked that same feeling and sensation, not only to the characters in the book, but into the characters, to the readers as well. Then the other two were they initially started out as really like fulfilling archetypes, but especially in book 2, the character of Valos is definitely coming into his own. I was really surprised at how much more depth I was able to give him, and I'm really proud of book 1. But I'm really excited for people to read book 2 because I think it's miles better than book 1. So even though we're talking about book 1, I'm really excited for book 2 and what readers are going to uncover there. And then 40 is more of the relatable character. I think he might have the most POV chapters. I'm not entirely too sure. But he's definitely the one that's more relatable to the reader. He has probably what a lot of nerds feel like, very outcasty type vibe. Sometimes people don't necessarily agree with him, particularly his family, which is, my family is very supportive of me all the time. But, growing up, you could feel like that sometimes, like, it's you against the world, no matter who's closest to you. So, but yeah, those are definitely the inspirations that I had come up with the character. And what was the second question again? The fan one?
The fan question is, so which characters are probably some of the funnest to create, and which ones are probably the most challenging to create?
Oh, the funnest. Funnest ended up being, and even writing her scenes, even though she's very briefly shown in this book, her name's Feyrin. She was a lot of fun to write. She kind of just like this. She knows she knows how she looks. She knows she's very pretty, but she's very capable at the same time. So some people can maybe underestimate her in that sense, but she kind of used people underestimating her just because she's very pretty to her advantage. And so that was just a lot of fun. She's a very capable leader, but she doesn't like to be put in incredibly high positions of leadership. Spoilers again, sorry. I didn't mean to spoil that part. But yeah, she was a lot of fun. The most challenging initially in book one was Valos. Who's one of the POV characters in it. He was very challenging to write because in that first draft, what I was talking about, his chapters were very stale and just very rigid, and there wasn't really much, push and pull. And it wasn't until I was drafting book two that I went back and actually changed a couple things in book one before it got published, just to kind of like plant some seeds that you'll see, that'll later be expanded upon in book two. But he was definitely initially, and I would say even, throughout the process of writing book one, he was probably the most challenging to write. But now in book two, he's probably the most fun chapters to write. So
nice. And kind of still in the same world of that. So in crafting the world of A Shadow's Vendetta, how did you make it gripping as well as compelling, both the setting and the atmospheric tone of the story, but also dealing with, as every author struggles with, the dreaded writer's block? Because we do have those days where we have it in our brains, we can't get it down on paper. So once again, just to reiterate, so when crafting the world and the overall setting and atmosphere, how did you make it engaging and yet compelling and appealing to the senses, but also realizing that there are going to be days where you don't want to write, or if you do want to write, you don't know how to do it?
yeah. With crafting the world, I think it really helped. Here, I'll bring up the book again. It really helped to have a map.
Yes, 100%.
Which was very helpful to me, and I would assume it would be very helpful to the reader. But also really trying to create the world as engaging and kind of just using the adjectives of like color and everything like that. Excuse me. That's probably the biggest inspiration I took from comic books, because obviously you read here. I'll just bring one up. Batman, art by Jorge Jimenez, with I think colors by I'm not going to pronounce that name, but it's very colorful. It's very bright. It's very poppy, but whenever it wants to be dreary and drab, it also shows that on the image and on the comic strip and everything like that. So I kind of wanted to use that as inspiration for trying to get the reader engaged into the world and trying to give it memorable places, but also just places that are maybe a little bit easier to visualize by maybe being a little too overly descriptive sometimes. You wouldn't really think that with the word count of the book, but sometimes I do especially going through it right now, I do think I can be a little too over descriptive on some things, but that's what I wanted to write. Especially if you compare that to Tolkien, who was also very overly descriptive on quite a few subjects. So that was definitely a big inspiration, and just trying to get people again, to visualize the world as best as they can. Obviously, with the interior artwork that's in the book, that definitely helps out with that. I can't get this strand of hair to stay. Oh gosh, there it goes again. But yeah, that also really helped with that. And then with writer's block, man, you just got to learn to work through it sometimes. It's hard to. You just got to grin and bear it. And even if what you're writing is just slop, I know I said earlier, like sometimes if I knew that my brain was just running on fumes at that point, writer's block isn't really running on fumes. It's more so just, I can't really think of an idea right now. I'm going to force myself to think of an idea and then I'll fix it.
That is true.
Yeah. So I'm just going to move this over here instead. There we go.
So from that point, so once after working with your editor and getting it to the point that you like where it is and publishing it, what was the overall reaction like from friends and family? Because as I'm sure you'll definitely agree, Travis, as authors, it is a very lonely journey in the beginning because it's all on us. Sometimes, I talked with a lot of authors on the show, they didn't tell their families till the very end, or in some cases, they told them from the very beginning, and it's always different from everybody. And not to mention, being an author in the digital age is vastly different than being an author 20 years ago. Every author now that I've talked with has had some form of social media presence, and it seems impossible to be without it. And social media is also a great place to get reviews and feedback, but we also leave ourselves exposed to the other side, the negative side, which can be very draining and taxing on us. So to combine them both together, Travis, looking back on the success of A Shadow's Vengeance, what are some of the highlighted reviews that you have really enjoyed reading and seeing as the author? And also, being an author in the digital age, like many others, what disciplines you to continue writing this series? Because not only do you love this series, but you want to share it with others.
Yeah, I think the first part, I got a lot of the feedback from the initial beta reads that I did. So after me and my author, I'm the author, me and my editor went through, a first pass of it together. And we had, a pretty good structure. I sent it off to 2 beta readers, and it was really their, excuse me, goodness. It was really their feedback that I was very interested to hear about, because at that point in time, I had really only heard like nothing but praise, because it was only me and my editor that were reading it. She was like, "Oh, this is really good." I'm like, "Yeah, but your job's not to tell me it's good. Your job's supposed to tell me it's bad." Which, she did a great job. I was really happy with it. That's not to say that she did a bad job. That's horrible. But no, I was just really trying to chase like, hey, I need somebody to say something negative about this, because I just want, not necessarily negative, but just, constructive criticism. I need somebody to be critical of it. And once I sent it off to my beta readers, they came back with really great feedback. Particularly one who, you look through the Google Docs of it, it's just highlights all up and down it, both of praises and of, criticisms of it. So I was just really thankful for that. I haven't really gotten any book reviews yet. I have one 5-star review, but there's nothing written on it. So I guess they liked the book and just didn't really know how to vocalize it, but that's completely fine. But yeah, what was the second part to the question? Oh, social media. So I do have a social media platform. I have an Instagram. That's all I've got. That's probably all I'll have, because just for my own sanity, I'm probably not going to go on Twitter or TikTok or anything like that. So maybe like you, maybe I'll start up like a YouTube channel one day, just doing like, I'll call it like nerdy vlogs or something like that. I don't really know. I have a pretty uninteresting life, so we'll see. But yeah, we'll see. I do think in this digital age, some form of social media is not necessarily required, but it is very much encouraged, because you see a lot of especially a lot of the self-published authors nowadays. A lot of their following and a lot of their relevance is definitely maintained through social media. to remind people, hey, go out, buy my book. Go out, buy my book. Okay, cover reveal. Okay, my book comes out in 2 weeks. Okay, my book comes out in 1 week. Stuff like that. So definitely building up a following is unfortunately very important nowadays, even for traditionally published authors. I was just listening to a podcast the other day about David Ragg, I believe he's called. He just came out with a new book called The Hunters. And it was the title of the podcast was about surviving the mid-list. And it was about even how traditionally published authors, if they're not a part of the upper list of bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers, if they're part of that mid and lower list, their marketing is essentially up to themselves. So they're traditionally published. They're, one of the big three, Orbit books. What's Brandon Sanderson's? Tor fantasy. If they aren't, doing the marketing for you, who else is going to except the authors? So usually it comes down to that point where everybody nowadays essentially has to have some form of social media or some form of social marketing just to get their name out there and just to get people to remind them, hey, I'm an author. If you're interested in this, you can go buy my book. So I'd much greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Very true. Absolutely. And that kind of goes into another question, which is this debate of, are we in a golden age or an iron age? I'll give some context for this question. So out of all the authors that I've interviewed in my 6 to 7 year period doing this show, I've learned that a lot of us as authors began our careers during the COVID lockdown years. And it was a breeding ground for new voices. And soon the floodgates opened and we dominated the industry, whether it's traditional, hybrid, or indie. But after years have gone by and we've settled into our genres, I've then had another look at this debate and have argued for the other side, which is that we are now more so of in an iron age, in a sense that for us as authors, whether you're indie, traditional, or hybrid, there are those that are authors and there are those who want to be known as authors. And those are two very different mindsets. One is dedicated to the craft, the other is dedicated to the marketing and getting a quick buck. And being an author is not getting a quick buck, I am sorry to say. And I would like to hear your thoughts on this, Travis, of whether or not, looking back on the success of indie authors, generally speaking, if we are in a golden age or iron age, with that also taking into account the rise of AI entering the publishing industry.
I think that's a really great question, and it's unfortunate something we do have to deal with. The whole AI thing. I did not know about the AI thing until my editor brought it up to me. She was basically explaining to me like what the AI does. It essentially just takes snippets or sentences or paragraphs from other people's works and puts it into the book or whatever that the person types up. I guess I don't even know how it works. So this is how ignorant I am of the AI thing, because I've seen Terminator 2. I know what happens if we trust AI. So, but yeah, it's unfortunately a shame. I know more about the AI artwork, which I guess it works more of the same, because when I was looking for an artist, I had several of them that said, AI artwork with like an X on it, which basically, is also a shame. I do understand the appeal of the AI artwork though, because it is much cheaper. And especially as indie publishers, we are not working on the biggest of budgets. It's all a self budget. So I understand the appeal to it. I did not go that route because I just knew that it probably wasn't going to be as good as a handcrafted art piece. Even though it was more expensive, it was definitely, to me, it was money well worth spent, because getting a cover is not cheap, especially getting interior art, multiple interior artworks is also not cheap. But again, I think it's well worth it, because you're not only giving not only supporting other artists, you're networking as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not just like networking for, marketing's sake. Like, I think I made a new friend with my artist that I talked to. I think I made I know I made a new friend with the composer that I worked with, which I probably just could have gotten an AI to write music for me as well, which is very unfortunate to say. I think that's really sad that we have AI writing music now. All of that could affect, now Audible offers AI voices, which I think is insane. And I would I'm listening to the audiobook right now. I'm going through and doing my own little edits with it, of the narrator that I'm having for the audiobook. And you could have not gotten this performance at all with AI. And to this day, I will forever be so grateful that I did not use it and that it's not part of this book. Just because, it has that human touch, even though there might be some flaws in there. They're human flaws. So accept that with what you will. But I'm very grateful for the non-AI artwork and the non-AI music and the non-AI voice narration. So that's very helpful. And then to answer your first question, are we in a golden or iron age? I would definitely say we're more in the, I would agree with you. I think we're more in the iron age now, because especially during COVID, we saw that rise, or even like right before COVID, we saw that really big, steep incline of self-published authors that were making it big, not only in the digital age, but definitely because of Amazon. Amazon definitely greatly profited from the lockdowns during COVID, from just stuff getting delivered, from Kindle, because everybody was stuck at home and we needed entertainment somehow. We needed some way to keep us entertained. Us nerds were eating really good because we already had plenty of stuff to keep us entertained. So, no, I definitely would agree with you. I think we're more at an iron age now. We haven't seen a lot of notable new self-published authors. I hope that will change here very soon. I think the market definitely has gotten a little saturated right now, which is okay to say. That's a shame to say, because I'm out here trying to be like, hey, buy my book. But no, it's unfortunate. But at the same time, I'm not really looking for it. Like you were saying at first, this isn't an incredibly lucrative process. If it ends up being it, hey, I'm just blessed in that way. But if it's not, I have a story that I want to tell, and I want to tell it in a certain way, and I want to serve a product in a certain way as well. If I end up getting an established readership, Lord willing, I want to respect that readership, so I want to make sure that they're getting what they want. But also I want to be a little selfish, and I want to, make a story that I want. I have this series in my mind. I have this series outlined. I'm going to finish it. And I'm just really, really excited to get it going. Even if the whole series of 4 books only sells, 100 copies, hey, that's 100 people that read my book. That's more than whoever I thought was, that's more than my friends and family. So that'd be a really great accomplishment. I think I'd be really, really happy with that. Even if it's just 50 copies, like that's pretty cool. So I think I was checking today. I've sold 29 hardbacks and 27 paper and ebooks. So that's around, I can't do math in my head, 50. Don't judge me. 56.
Around 50 copies sold of your
book. Yeah. So around 50 copies. So hey, goal 1 already accomplished. Let's get to 100 now. So that's fine with me.
Nice, Travis. Nice. And we just have about 15 minutes left in this amazing interview. So we're now going to go into the business side of being an author. Now, as an indie author, what are some of the surprising things that you learned about being an indie author in terms of research? And looking back on that as you go into writing book 2, is there anything you would have done differently for book 1?
Oh, yeah. I would have pushed the release date back significantly and tried to definitely push the marketing probably a little bit more, especially with ARC readers, because unfortunately the copies were not available quick enough, which was, it's a shame. It happens, life gets in the way sometimes, but I definitely would have just bitten the bullet and be like, okay, let's push this back. Let me try to get some ARC copies out there to spread the word a little bit better. Possibly get some early reviews in there as well. I definitely would have done that. So for those of you out there, if you're listening, if you're really committed to that release date and you haven't gotten a single book out yet, and you're like, man, nobody seems to be talking about my book. And if you want people to, that's totally fine. I was kind of at the point where I just, for lack of a better phrase, I just really didn't care if people weren't really talking about my book. I was just like, I just want to get it out there. If it's out there, it's fine. If people talk about it, it's okay. It's a debut author from somebody nobody's ever heard of. So I'm not expecting it to sell gangbusters or to break the bank or anything like that. So, but for those who want to probably succeed more on the business side, I would definitely do your marketing pretty heavy, especially on social media. It really helps out a lot. Reach out far and wide, people with 100 followers, people with 1,000 followers, people with 10,000 followers. Reach out to all those people and see if you can get them to see if you can get them interested in your book. Make sure that you've got, your blurb ready. Make sure you've got kind of like your pitch. My pitch was kind of like, hey, if you really like the elven mythology of the Silmarillion, if you like action like Batman, if you like the kind of tonal atmosphere of the Diablo video games, you'll probably like this book. And, a lot of people kind of, probably rolled their eyes at the Silmarillion explanation, but they heard Batman and Diablo and they're like, oh, that kind of piqued my interest. So I'm like, yeah, there we go. So that kind of definitely helped out a lot. So if you can, find some comparisons or just really be open and honest about what inspired you, that can really help out a lot with trying to pitch your book to try to get people copies and stuff like that. Because that's, I think, what people really admire the most, especially just in the common reader. People appreciate authenticity. People don't like being fake, which, is sometimes hard to do because sometimes you're not having a great day. So you just have to put on a smile and just, accept the day as it is. But people really do appreciate authenticity and just being yourself and putting yourself on the page. I think you'll be surprised how many people will appreciate that. And if you just express that and that's who you are, then go for it. Just that's my marketing 101, and it might not be working out right now, but hey, maybe it'll work out in the future. We'll see.
Very well said, Travis. Very well said. And with that very great comment on marketing, when it comes to finding your voice as an author, that is also very important. You don't want to make a book that's so familiar that it may be seen as copying someone else, but you don't want to be too new that it's going to confuse the reader. It's that middle balance. And then finding one's voice then leads into finding one's audience. Some people write for the market. Some people write for the readership. How did it work for you? How did you find your voice and your audience for this series?
That's a really great question. It was pretty hard at first to find my own voice. I had written 3 books before this, which was kind of some advice that if you go back and watch like Brandon Sanderson's lectures, something like that, he highly encourages a lot of people, hey, write some books that no one's ever going to see. Make sure you master your craft and figure out like what you want to do. And a big thing for me was I like to write some pretty intricate and kind of blow-by-blow fight scenes. And I was curious on if that would make me unique enough, because I know there's quite a few authors out there that do that. I just mentioned one earlier, Andrzej Sapkowski, who wrote the Witcher series. A lot of those fight scenes are pretty blow-by-blow for the action. But I just wanted to write that way in my own way. I think finding your own voice can be a little tough, but eventually you'll just go through so many different drafts of your draft. You'll eventually craft your own voice and how you like to read it. And if you just, subconsciously end up copying somebody else, your editor is going to point that out. So, yeah, your editor will point that out for you. So if you have a unique enough voice, not only that's in your head, but that you're able to articulate on the page, that's definitely going to help you out a lot. So in order to craft that, just look at what inspires you. Even if it's your job, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything that you read or watch or listen to. It could be your job. It could be the people around you. It could be if you're really passionate about gardening and that inspires you to write a book about a girl who likes to use magic for gardening or something, something like that. That was very cliche sounding. It could be a boy gardening too. It's okay. But just think about what inspires you, and then that's going to give you your unique voice. Even if what inspires you is, the same thing as what inspires a lot of people. A lot of people like Batman. A lot of people like Tolkien. That's not an unpopular opinion to like both those things. So, but maybe combining them, maybe that's kind of where I can find my unique voice. So that's what I thought about with me, is that, hey, maybe if I combine the two, maybe that's where I find my own nice little way into this little giant web of authors.
Nice, Travis. Nice. And we're almost nearing the end. So we're now going to go to the final two questions, which I think I could not think of two better questions to end this incredible and amazing author interview. And here they are. With everything that you've said and more, ultimately, what do you want people to take away from book one, and ultimately the series that you are writing? And secondly, what is your word of wisdom to fellow authors listening to this right now?
What I want them to take away is a bit of escapism, and also just that found family value to it. Tolkien was very great at this. Obviously, I think the Batman mythos is very great at this as well. And The Witcher. So a lot of books that I really like kind of have that found family element to them. Places that you just meet really great friends, lifelong friends that you least expect them to. I could definitely say the same thing has been very true in my life, where I've just met, lifelong friends in the least expected of places, which is, not necessarily something of like self-imposing in on the reader or anything like that in the book, but just that's what I really enjoy. I think that's what really emotionally connects with me, is kind of that found family vibe. People that don't know each other, who are strangers, who become friends, and who would, either lay down their life with one another, or who would stick by them through the worst time in their life, through the best time in their life. So I really want them to kind of go away with a sense of that. And again, just a sense of escapism. Like, hey, here's just a fun little action adventure fantasy book that maybe just makes you forget about the workday, or just forget about, something bad happened today, and I'm going to escape into this book for a little bit. Help me kind of forget all about that. So yeah, that'd be cool. And then words of wisdom. I'm still growing, so I'm still not incredibly wise nowadays. But I would say if you are an author, keep writing. I know it can get very discouraging looking at the numbers, either incrementally getting bigger by only 2 daily, or not getting bigger at all, just staying completely stagnant. Keep writing. Keep writing if that's what you love to do. And it's something that I love to do, and it's something I'm going to keep on doing. Again, like we were talking about, if I only end up selling 100 copies over my entire lifetime, hey, I wrote some books. That's pretty cool. So yeah, just keep writing. And if you're someone who is either thinking about writing or hasn't written anything, write. Just do it. Just go for it. There's nothing stopping you now, especially nowadays with, the ease of access to books or anything like that. There's nothing stopping you from writing what you want to write, what you're passionate about, what, is just aching inside of your heart that you just want to get out there. There's nothing stopping you. So just go for it.
Awesome. Excellent ending, Travis, to this amazing author interview. And with that said, everybody, we conclude this amazing author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I want to give a huge thank you to Travis for coming on the show, making this show his very first author interview. A huge thank you to him, and congratulations for his series. Now, Travis, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect, as well as buy copies of your books?
So I'm on Instagram at TJ_Cooper_author. And then you can also find the book anywhere now. So you can go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, anything like that. So yeah, it would be really helpful if you did buy the book and read it and enjoy it. Or even if you didn't enjoy it, just go out there and rate it. Even if you want to give it a 1-star, hey, any criticism I'll take, helps me get better. So yeah.
Awesome. I will link all that down below in the description of this video. Thank everyone for joining us for another amazing, incredible author interview here on the show. A huge thank you to Travis for coming on the show, making his first ever author interview debut. And as always, viewers and listeners, this has been The Wandering Scribe and The Wandering Quill, signing out. Wish you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you all in the next episode.